News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moskow.
Karen, we begin with the ongoing tensions between the U.S. and Iran, with both sides maintaining blockades over the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump has said he will keep restrictions in place until Iran comes forward with a new peace proposal. At the White House, Bloomberg's Jeff Mason asked the president about his timetable.
How long are you willing to wait until you get a unified response?
Don't rush me, Jeff. Guys like you want to say, so we were in Vietnam for 18 years. We were in Iraq for many, many years. We're in for I don't like to say World War II because that was a biggie, but we were 4.5, almost 5 years in World War II. We were in the Korean War for 7 years. I've been doing this for 6 weeks.
President Trump spoke to Bloomberg White House correspondent Jeff Mason in the Oval Office. We get more from Bloomberg's Jumana Bersetchi in Dubai.
He's suggesting that we are in the early innings of what could be a prolonged conflict. At the same time, the Iranian side asserting once again that they're not going to go back to the negotiations table until the U.S. naval blockade is actually lifted. No signs that the U.S. have plans to do so. And overnight, I also want to draw your attention to an article that our Bloomberg colleagues put up, also suggesting that the way that President Trump has been conducting this, a lot of the threats and assertions, the language that he's been using on social media has also not been resonating well with Iranian officials. And they say that that is actually one of the limiting factors that is stopping the two sides from getting together at the negotiating table once again.
Bloomberg's Jumana Bersetchi reporting from Dubai. Meantime, President Trump says Israel and Lebanon have agreed to extend their ceasefire for another 3 weeks after talks in Washington. There's no immediate response from Israel or Iran-backed Hezbollah. The militant group is not involved in the ceasefire, but has largely abided by it.
Well, Nathan, the price of oil is set for its biggest weekly gain since the first week of the war. Right now, NYMEX crude oil is up 1.5% at $97.27 a barrel. Brent is at $106.88. With little sign of de-escalation, the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz is taking an increasing toll on global energy markets. And we get more with Bloomberg's Will Kennedy in London.
Going back to last Friday, when the Iranians said the strait was open, there was a really positive reaction from oil traders who thought that finally there was a likely resolution and that ships might start leaving the Gulf and get back, and the energy market could begin the long process of getting back to normal. And I think this week that optimism has really faded, and we've seen a steady ratcheting up in the oil price. As a result, it's really worth bearing in mind that although the intense military action, the bombing has stopped, the strait is probably more closed than it ever has been, and we're not getting the oil and the fuel that we need out of the Persian Gulf.
Bloomberg's Will Kennedy in London. According to Goldman Sachs, the Persian Gulf oil supply is about 57% below pre-war levels.
And a new report, Karen, says the Iran war will keep the global natural gas market tight for at least 2 more years. This is according to the International Energy Agency. It says the conflict has delayed a long-anticipated glut in liquefied natural gas, even as new capacity comes online. Qatar has said Iranian strikes last month damaged about 17% of its liquefaction capacity. It says repairs there could take as long as 5 years.
Meanwhile, Nathan, Bloomberg News has learned European Union leaders are tasking the bloc's finance ministers to come up with new measures to deal with the continent's energy crunch. Bloomberg chief European correspondent Oliver Crook is covering the EU leaders' meeting in Cyprus.
There's, of course, that longer-term push the EU will use to say that this is all about electrification. In the long term, no matter where your gas is coming from, whether it's Russia, whether it's the Gulf, and increasingly also concerns about the United States, you're not safe until you're energy autonomous, and that is going to be one of their big pushes to try to get that energy independence through electricity and electrification.
Bloomberg chief Europe correspondent Oliver Crook says gas has gained 34% since the conflict started, while Brent crude has jumped 37%.
Well, back in the U.S., Karen, the Trump administration may be looking at ways to punish NATO allies for what it sees as a lack of support for the war. This is according to a report from Reuters that says the Pentagon is considering options like suspending Spain from the alliance or reviewing the U.S. position on the U.K.'s claim to the Falkland Islands. The report cites an internal email and a U.S. official. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez was one of the earliest critics of the war. He called it a violation of international law. Sanchez says he will maintain normal cooperation with NATO allies and rely on official positions from Washington, not reports of private emails.
Nathan, a U.S. soldier involved in the capture of then Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has been charged with using classified information to win more than $400,000 in an online betting market. Federal officials say Gannon Ken Van Dyke placed about 13 bets in the week leading up to the military operation to make money on the prediction market site Polymarket. Van Dyke is a Special Forces soldier based in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The Justice Department says he was involved in the planning and execution of the Venezuela raid.
Let's turn back to markets now, Karen. Futures are mixed as we close out the trading week, though. NASDAQ futures are getting a lift from Intel. Those shares, wow, up 24% in early trading. The chipmaker delivered a sales forecast well above analyst estimates. Bloomberg technology host Ed Ludlow has more on what's driving the rally.
The Intel story is a CPU story. So in the world of AI, when we move from a place where a lot of the activity is focused on training to inference, running the AI models, Intel's feeling that benefit. And frankly, they are struggling to keep up with the CPU demand. That's kind of the core story. Margins were better in the quarter gone largely because of higher revenues, but the outlook for the current period on sales, that's the driver. It is the AI and data center segment.
Bloomberg Tech's Ed Ludlow says the upbeat outlook suggests Intel CEO Lip Bhutan is making progress on his plan to improve Intel's operations.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.